I'm David Howard. I'm the spiritual leader here. It is my joy and pleasure to welcome you to Unity Spiritual Center of Denver on this beautiful fall Sunday. Thank you for choosing to spend part of your Sunday with us today. And I know that you join me in mourning the events that occurred Friday evening in Paris. And all of the events such as that have occurred around the world. Also, there was a bombing in Beirut that killed many people this weekend, earlier this week as well. Sometimes I think that we get a little desensitized to some of those events that happen, and they don't even make the news anymore. So it's important for us to remember that there are many people around the world who are suffering the effects of violence. And so I want us to just look at for a moment, and it came up to me, and so I want to share with you a little bit about what came to me about that. And I thought, well, what is our response? Because I read some things on Facebook and other places about, people's visceral sort of response from their fear and their anger and their pain and really wanting to retaliate and lash out. And I meditated on that because that disturbed me somewhat. And what I want to just share with you is that my question was and is, what is our response to violence? What should our response to violence be? And what came to me is that our response is and always should be love. That our response to any situation is love. And what does that mean for us? And I think that we need to understand that love, as we know love, is not some mushy kind of emotional sentiment as we talk about love. That love is one of those words that is sometimes misunderstood and sometimes used in ways that may not be as meaningful as they could be. But when I think about love, I love the idea that, and I heard it from Cindy Wigglesworth for the first time, and she said she heard it from an Eastern tradition that said love is a bird with two wings. One wing is wisdom, and the other wing is compassion. And if either wing is broken, the bird cannot fly. And so as I think about responding from love, I think about responding from wisdom and compassion. And what does that mean for us? I think of wisdom as heart knowing. Not an intellectual knowing, but a knowing in the heart, connecting deeply in the heart with the truth. The deep, spiritual, essential truth of us. And I believe that deep, essential truth of us is our oneness, our unity with all life, with all humanity. That when we enter that place of wisdom, we know our unity with those who died. We know our unity with those who experience the pain of the loss of people they love and care about. We also know our unity with the gunman. And we know our unity with the suicide bomber. And we know our unity with each and every one. And when we enter that place of compassion, compassion is feeling with. Knowing our unity and our oneness in that space of feeling. Compassion is joining, feeling with. And so when we enter that place of compassion, we feel the pain. We feel the grief with. We feel the fear of those who were witness. We feel the pain of those that we would call the perpetrators. We enter that place of love, which is wisdom and compassion. And then we respond from love. How do we do that? I think that I've heard calls for war, calls for retaliation, calls for killing those people, those people. And that hurts my heart. And what hurts my heart and what I mourn is that maybe it could be that that is our only solution. That may be the only thing we know to do. And if so, if that is the only thing we know to do, can we enter that from love and compassion? Can we mourn our choices? Can we truly be in a place of love, wisdom, and compassion in our choices? We see it on a grand scale in this situation. And yet each and every one of us faces that same decision every day of our lives. When we feel our pain, when we feel our anger, when we feel ourselves wanting to lash out, are we willing to stop? To enter into that place of wisdom where I know I am you and you are me. Our unity. And am I willing to feel with you? Am I willing to know myself as you? And am I willing to know you as me? And am I willing to allow that to inform my response? I'm going to be talking today about living a life that matters. And what I have come to in my contemplation of that is living a life that matters for me is living from the greatest degree of love, the greatest degree of wisdom and compassion that I am capable of in the moment. And for me, that is what it means to live a life that matters and to live with the integrity, to live in that place of wisdom and compassion. And so I invite us to hold that right now. Come together in that place. Breathe together in that place, deep within the heart, moving away from the mind, the brain, that sometimes triggers us, sometimes triggers that fight or flight response within us, and let us move consciously into our hearts, where we know our unity in God, and we know our unity in and through each other. Knowing with and feeling that place of love and connection and unity. As unity teacher Eric Butterworth said, love is not an emotion. But it is an energy that begins in God and has no ending. And so we center our awareness in love. And together we mourn the pain and the loss, the grief of so many people living in the world with that loss, the pain of loss. We grieve with, we mourn with. And we hold each and every one in our hearts, in love, in that place of deep knowing, compassion. And we hold ourselves in that place as well, surrounding ourselves in that love, place of deep compassion in our own pain, our own suffering, our own loss. We are one. We are one in and as the very life of God expressing. We are one in and as that life of God expressing in each other and through all creation. And let us come together with a renewed commitment to live the greatest degree of love that we are capable of in any moment, committing ourselves to surrendering to love in every moment. And so in that awareness, we come together this morning, honoring that unity, honoring the life of God that is expressing in us, through us, as us, in and through all creation. We are one. We celebrate our unity. And so it is. Amen. Several weeks ago, maybe a month or two ago, I shared with you about an experience I had. I'm working with a guy right now who is a practitioner, and we do breath work and body work and some different things. And so I have experiences, awarenesses that come to me. And during that process, I know many of you experienced that, have experienced something similar to that. So I shared something about, I experienced an awareness about my grandmother a few months ago, and back 30 years ago, something that happened 30 years ago, and how powerful that was for me. And so the last time I went to see this gentleman and did some work with him, he invites me in to do some breathing and some body movement and getting in touch with what's going on. And so I start breathing, and I had this experience of myself. I had this image of myself running. I had this image of me running as fast as I could, as hard as I could. But I realized I wasn't running from anything. I wasn't really running to anything. I was just running. It's sort of like that rat on the wheel, It's not getting anywhere. It's just running. And so, as I tend to do, I recognized that from my past experience that when things like that come up, when I become aware of things like that, it's usually something for me to learn. Whether I really want to learn anything from it or not, sometimes there's something for me to learn. And you know what they call that? The AFGO, A-F-G-O? Another fine growth opportunity. Have you heard that before? It was another fine growth opportunity for me. And if you read my blog, this is sort of a non sequitur, but I'm going to try to relate the two. If you read my blog this past week, you heard about some of my experience on my vacation, which was wonderful. I don't mean to suggest that the vacation wasn't great. It was great. I loved it. I love California. I love being in California. And it was a beautiful time. But what I shared, and I'm not going to bore you with it again, but what I shared was a lot of what was going on in my mind around questioning and curiosity and wondering. And it began with being in the airport and just becoming keenly aware in a way that I probably had not done before of all the people in the airport. Have you noticed there are a lot of people in the airport? And especially when we were going up and down the escalators, like, wow, this is like cattle being moved through the chutes, All these people. And we got to the airport in San Diego, and there were a lot of people. And then we got out on the freeway. There were a lot of people driving cars. And so, like I said, in a way that probably I haven't done in a long time, maybe ever, I was just keenly aware of people and the way people move and do, and people going to and from and here and there. And, I had this image of them doing that, just running. Kind of like I get caught up in doing sometimes, just running. And then I wondered, what? What is it all about? What does it all mean? What's it all about, Alfie? So I had this thought was going on in my mind about what are these people doing? And are they like me sometimes so caught up in the daily activity that I don't stop, maybe, and I know I'm projecting all my stuff onto everybody else, but isn't that kind of the way of life? That we just kind of, what's going on in here is going on out there. And so I'm curious, are they just running? And does all of that running that we do on a daily basis really matter? If it does matter, why does it matter? What does it mean to live life mattering? And so if you read my blog, you'll see all the other questions that came up around that. But what I came down to was, for me, what the question boiled down to me was, what really matters to me? And why does it matter? And am I really in service to what matters to me? It's all of my running, all of my doing, all of the things that I do on a daily basis in service to what is really important, to what matters to me. And I want to share with you a few things that have come up for me about that, and maybe you can relate to them. One thing I realized is that what matters to me, what I value, is fluid. That it moves, it changes in the moment. Jay and I have been practicing nonviolent communication, and we taught it here, and it really talks about what we value, what matters to us, and being aware of what matters to us. Because what it teaches is that everything we do is in service to what matters to us, what we value, whether we're conscious of that or not. Everything we do, everything we say, is in service to what is meaningful to us in the moment. And when I look at that, I think, yes, and. I think that there's something that is core to that. There is something essential within all of us that matters. And I think that is, as I talked about earlier, love. That I believe that we are the expression of divine love, each and every one of us. And I think at a very essential soul purpose level, love is what really matters. And that love may be expressed or experienced or demonstrated in many different ways. Nurturing, caring, peace, joy, all sorts of ways that we can express and experience that divine nature that is us. But I think at the very core of us, it's love. And as I said before, I believe that living a life that matters is living in service to that love, to the greatest ability we have in the moment. And so my question then was, well, why am I not doing that all the time? Why am I not aware of it, and why am I not doing it? And I think there's several things at play there for me. And maybe for you. One is that I think sometimes we are serving what we think should matter. And sometimes what we think should matter is stuff that we've taken on from society, from our family, from our church, from our schooling, whatever that is. Sometimes I think that we're living a life that matters to our parents, maybe, or that matters to our church, or matters to our school. And so we're in service to what matters, but it's not necessarily what truly matters to us. And when you serve something that doesn't matter to you, you feel it, don't you? You can feel the pain of it. You can feel the disconnection of it when you're serving something that really doesn't matter at a deep level to you. Steve Jobs, the founder of Apple, in a 2005 commencement address to Stanford University, said that when he wakes up in the morning, he looks in the mirror and he said, I know he's gone now, if this were the last day of my life, would I do what I'm about to do today? And if the answer for too many days in a row was no, then he knew it's time to change something. He went on to say, don't live somebody else's life. So I think sometimes we're living what matters to somebody else. And it's about becoming aware of that for me. Sometimes I think we live according to what matters to our bosses or to our spouses or to our partners or whatever. And sometimes I'm not saying any of this is bad or wrong. I'm not judging good or bad, right or wrong here. I'm just inviting awareness for us. To be aware of what we're serving. To be aware of if what we're doing on a daily basis is really serving what matters to us at a very deep level. Sometimes we do serve what's important to our bosses or to our spouses. And sometimes we do that in order to meet a need. And again, I'm not saying don't do it. I'm not saying ignore your boss, don't do what your boss says and get fired. I'm not advocating that. I'm just inviting awareness. What do I value? What matters to me? And am I serving that? And I think sometimes I serve this idea of who I think I'm supposed to be, or this image that I've created for myself. So I'm continuing to serve that. Again, I'm not saying good or bad. I'm just saying be aware of it. I have to own that I had this judgment. I mean, there's a lot of people who have a lot of money in California. Maybe you've noticed that. Big houses, big cars, estates, all of that. And I think, well, are they just serving that? And does that really matter? And I know that there's some judgment in that. But if it matters to them, if that matters to you, own it, serve it, be it, because there's something in that is really important. So I'm not saying don't do that either. Again, I don't want you to hear right or wrong, good or bad. And I don't want to feel right or wrong, good or bad. So what are we serving? And then I had the realization about, well, what informs what matters to us? What shapes what matters to me? What shapes what matters to you? Because it's not always the same. What matters to me may not matter to you. Have you noticed? Maybe. Jay and I were walking on Venice Beach one day. And if you've ever been to Venice Beach, you know the variety of people that you might see at Venice Beach. And so we're walking on Venice Beach, and I was thinking, again, I'm projecting, I was thinking, wow, I wonder if any of these people or most of these people really consider their own spiritual awakening and a personal transformation. And again, my assumption was no. But how the heck do I know? But I thought, wow, that's so valuable to me. It's so important to me. It really matters to me. And so I don't understand why everybody doesn't want that. I don't understand why every seat in this room is not filled. Because I think it shouldn't be important to everybody. But what I realize is that it may be important to everybody. And they may just have a different way of serving it, right? I mean, it may be important to have spiritual awakening and personal transformation to somebody, and they may serve that by working out at Muscle Beach. I don't know. It's not my business. But what matters to me, what matters to you might be different. And where does that come from? I think I think a few things came to me about that. I think one thing that I think is true about that is that we are all expressions of divine life. We are all God in expression, and we are all God in expression in a very unique and wondrous way. Many people call that the soul. That our souls come forth into this life and we have something to give, something to share, something to express that is only ours to live, to express, to give, to share with the world. And I think that when we're in touch with that, matters to us. Mythologist Joseph Campbell called it our bliss. And he said this, I think the best thing I can say is to follow your bliss. But, listen to this, if your bliss is just your fun and your excitement, you're on the wrong track. Know where your bliss is. And that involves coming down to a deep place in yourself. Your bliss can guide you to that transcendent mystery. Because your bliss is the welling up of the energy of the transcendent wisdom within you. Your bliss is the welling up of the transcendent wisdom within you. And so, as he said, getting deep within ourselves and touching that transcendent wisdom within us that wants to be expressed as love in the world. I think that's one aspect of what informs what matters to us. I also think that our life experiences can inform what matters to us. I have a good friend in Dallas who actually, if you asked her, she would probably say she's my daughter, my adopted daughter. She came here as an asylum seeker from Africa several years ago because her life was threatened. Her life was in danger in Africa. She was spoke out for women's rights, was an advocate against female genital mutilation, which she was a victim of. And she still is an advocate of that today. But she came here as an asylum seeker, and she had stories about how she was treated, the things that she experienced, the abuses that she experienced while she was living in Africa. And what rings true to me about that is that her life experience informed to a great extent what matters to her. Because what matters to her is safety and equality, respect, value for women, for all people. And she serves to the best of her ability, I believe, that which matters to her. And she does it, I believe, to the best of her ability as an expression of love and care and compassion for other people. And I think, in some ways, I don't always agree with her tactics or the way she says things. But as I said, living a life that matters is about, from my perspective, be living in service to the greatest degree of love we are capable of in the moment. And our capacity for love continues to grow as we continue to connect with it and as we continue to express it, I believe. It's a process, growing process. And I also believe that what matters to us is shaped and informed by what breaks our hearts. Andrew Harvey said in his book, The Hope, ask what breaks your heart. Look at the world around you and ask what breaks your heart. Not so much with sadness or fear, but with love. What breaks your heart open to be an expression of love? What calls you? It's like I was talking about in the opening this morning. We look at the world around us. We look at people who are suffering. We look at people who are suffering and who are acting out in violent ways. We look at people who are suffering as a result of that. We look at what goes on in the media. We look at what shows up in the media a lot these days are police officers using excessive force. We look at this movement around Black Lives Matter. What matters to us? And what matters to us is love. At the very deepest core level of our being, I believe what matters to us is love. And how do we express that love? It's not about fighting against. It's not about judging someone as bad or wrong or evil. It is about connecting with love and what matters to us in that place of love. Safety for all people, equality for all people, respect, value for all humanity and all creation. That's what really matters to us, I believe, if we're willing to connect with that. And so what I encourage us to do, if we're not in touch with what really matters to us, I'm going to invite you to ask some questions. If you're not in touch with your bliss, if you're not in touch with your soul, with that transcendent wisdom that is bubbling up in you, ask yourself, what do I love? What do I love? And how can I express that love to the greatest degree that I am capable of in the moment? If you're not in touch with how your life experience may have shaped what matters to you, then maybe ask yourself this question. In what area of my life would I like to have experienced more love? How would I like to have been loved instead of abused? How would I like to have been loved instead of bullied? How would I like to have been loved instead of outcast? Connect with how you would like to experience love and then find a way to give it to someone else. And then if you're not in touch with what really matters to you, what breaks your heart open, ask that question. Sit with it. What breaks my heart open with compassion? And then find a way to express that compassion. Living a life that matters is living a life in service to the love that you are. The love that God is moving through you, expressing as you, expressing as me. And I believe that as we do that, as we get in touch with what we love, what matters to us, how we would like to have experienced love, and how we can experience and express compassion to the world, I believe as we live in what matters to us, as we express what matters to us, we serve the world. And we co-create a world that works for everyone. A world where what matters to you matters to me. And what matters to me matters to you. And we come together in that shared space of love, wisdom, and compassion. And to the best of our ability, we live in that space. We love from that space. So I want to leave you with what Jesus said in the Sermon on the Mount. You have heard it said, an eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, do not resist the evildoer. If anyone strikes you on the right cheek, turn the other one also. If anyone wants to sue you and take your coat, give your cloak as well. And if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go also the 2nd mile. You have heard it said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, so that you may be children of your Father in heaven. For he makes his sun rise on the evil and on the good, and sends rain on the righteous and on the unrighteous. So I think what the master teacher, way shower Jesus, our brother, our teacher, said to us in that is, connect with the love within you. And if someone does something that offends you, don't focus on that. When he said if someone strikes you on a cheek, turn the other cheek. Don't focus on that. Rise to a higher consciousness. Rise to the consciousness of love, not retaliation. Rise to the consciousness of not seeing that person as an evildoer, but seeing them as the love of God made manifest. See them as that love expressing. You must be willing to come to experience and to live our lives in service to love, loving ourselves, loving each other, living a life that matters.